Deep in the heart of the Blackwood forest, an eerie silence filled the night air. The moon shone dimly through the thick canopy, casting ghostly shadows across the forest floor. In the center of a small clearing stood a magnificent but weary-looking mother wolf. Her fur was matted with dirt, her ribs visible beneath her thick coat, and her golden eyes filled with desperation. But what caught the most attention was the heavy iron chain binding her to an ancient, gnarled tree. The metal links rattled softly as she strained against them, but no matter how hard she pulled, she couldn't break free. From the darkness, a small figure emerged. A human baby, barely 2 years old, waddling toward her with innocent curiosity. The child's tattered clothes and unkempt hair hinted at a harsh life, yet his eyes were filled with wonder. The mother wolf let out a low whimper, her gaze locked onto the child. She lowered her head, almost bowing, as if pleading for something. The baby, unafraid, stepped closer and reached out a tiny hand to touch her nose. A tear rolled down the wolf's cheek. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed from the trees. Dark figures emerged. Hunters, their faces cold and merciless. One of them, a towering man with a cruel sneer, raised a rifle. "This beast is dangerous," he muttered, taking aim. The baby turned, his eyes wide with confusion. Then, something incredible happened. The child placed his tiny hands on the iron chain, and with a flash of light, the links shattered. The mother wolf was free. She stood for a moment, looking between the child and the hunters. Then, without hesitation, she lunged, not at the men, but at the chains on the ground. She grabbed them in her jaws and ran. The hunters, momentarily stunned, hesitated. The leader cursed and lowered his gun. "Let her go. She's useless now." As the mother wolf disappeared into the forest, the baby sat down, staring at the place where she had been. A chilling wind whispered through the trees, carrying the echo of a mother's silent promise. She would return. The forest swallowed the mother wolf in darkness as she fled, the broken chains clinking softly with every step. The baby sat still in the clearing, his wide eyes locked on the fading silhouette of the creature that had just spared his life. The hunters, too stunned to react, eventually turned back toward their camp, muttering curses under their breath. But the baby was not alone. A pair of golden eyes glowed from the shadows beyond the trees. Another wolf, smaller, younger, watched with intense curiosity. Unlike the mother, this one bore no chains. It stepped forward hesitantly, sniffing the air around the child. The baby giggled. At that sound, the wolf stopped, tilting its head. It took another step forward, and then another, until its warm breath brushed the child's tiny hands. Carefully, the baby reached out, his fingers burying themselves in the wolf's thick fur. A strange warmth pulsed between them, something ancient, something neither human nor beast could understand. Then the child did something unexpected. He stood up and toddled after the mother wolf's trail, the young wolf trotting beside him. From the hunter's camp, the cruel man with the rifle glanced back and narrowed his eyes. "Where do you think you're going, kid?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the night air. The baby didn't answer. He just kept walking, drawn toward something unseen. The hunter's grip tightened around his gun. "Someone grab him." One of the men moved forward, but before he could take a step, a deep, guttural growl rumbled from the darkness. The trees rustled violently as a shadowy figure emerged. The mother wolf had returned, but she was not alone. Behind her, more wolves slipped silently into the clearing. Dozens of them, their eyes glowing like embers in the moonlight. Back, family. And they were here for the child. The hunters hesitated. They were armed, but they knew the odds. One wrong move and the pack would tear them apart. The leader of the hunters cursed under his breath, lowering his rifle. "Take the kid if you want him," he muttered, stepping back. "He's nothing but trouble anyway." The baby turned his gaze to the mother wolf. She nodded. With one last glance at the frightened men, the child reached for the wolf's thick fur and held on as she led him into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. The young wolf followed close behind. And just like that, the baby was gone. The hunters never saw him again. But whispers spread throughout the village. Stories of a human child raised by wolves, running through the woods like a phantom, neither man nor beast. Some claimed to have seen golden eyes peering from the treetops. Others spoke of a shadow that watched from the edges of the firelight. And deep within the heart of the forest, where no human dared to tread, the wolves howled, not in sorrow but in celebration. For the child had finally come home. The baby disappeared into the depths of the forest, guided by the mother wolf and her pack. The hunters, though shaken, knew better than to follow. But in the village, rumors spread like wildfire. A child had been taken by wolves. Some whispered that the boy had always been different, that he was meant for something beyond human understanding. Others believed he had perished, another victim of the merciless wilderness. But deep in the heart of the Blackwood forest, something extraordinary was happening. The child, barely 2 years old, was no longer afraid. He clung to the thick fur of the mother wolf as she carried him through the undergrowth, her golden eyes scanning the darkness for unseen dangers. The other wolves followed in silence, their padded feet making no sound against the earth. The young wolf that had first approached the baby trotted beside them, its head held high with a strange sense of duty. It seemed drawn to the child, as if bound to him by an invisible thread. After what felt like hours, the pack reached a hidden valley, an untouched paradise concealed from human eyes. A waterfall cascaded down moss-covered rocks into a crystal-clear pool, its surface shimmering under the moonlight. Towering trees, their bark ancient and gnarled, stretched toward the heavens, their roots weaving through the earth like veins of an unseen power. The wolves slowed as they entered the sacred ground. The mother wolf gently placed the baby down on the soft grass, her nose nudging him forward. The child stood unsteadily, his bare feet sinking into the cool earth. He looked around, his young mind struggling to comprehend the beauty surrounding him. And then something stirred in the shadows. A wolf unlike any other emerged from the darkness. It was massive, larger than any wolf the child had seen, with a coat as dark as midnight and eyes that burned like molten gold. A deep scar ran across its muzzle, a mark of battles fought long ago. The other wolves bowed their heads as the great beast approached. The baby, unaware of the creature's authority, reached out with innocent curiosity. The great wolf lowered its head, sniffing the child before exhaling a long breath. Then it spoke, not in words but in something deeper. Feeling. Connection. A force that pulsed through the air like an unspoken truth. You are not one of them, yet you do not belong to us. What are you? The wolves parted, revealing a narrow, winding path leading up the rocky cliffs beyond the valley. At the very top, where the wind howled through the jagged stones, stood the remains of an ancient shrine, its origins unknown even to the wolves. The child was placed at the base of the trail. Finn stood beside him, his tail twitching anxiously. He must climb alone, Galder said. If he reaches the shrine before the moon is at its peak, he will be one of us. If he does not, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The child, sensing the weight of the moment, looked up at the towering cliffs. He did not understand the words, but he understood the challenge. He took a step forward, then another. The climb had begun. The child and the mountain. The wind roared as the baby crawled up the steep path, his tiny fingers gripping the cold rock. Finn paced at the bottom, whimpering but not daring to follow. The wolves watched in silence. Step by step the child climbed higher. The rocks were sharp, cutting into his soft skin, but he did not stop. The wind howled, threatening to push him back, but he pressed on. And then, growl. A low, menacing sound echoed from the shadows. The baby paused, his tiny heart pounding in his chest. From the darkness, a pair of red eyes appeared. A creature, neither wolf nor man, slithered out from the crevices of the mountain. Its body was twisted, its fur mangled and blackened. Its teeth, long and jagged, gleamed in the moonlight. The child did not cry. He did not run. Instead he stood small, fragile but unyielding. The creature lunged. A blur of fur and fangs shot through the air. Fun, defying the trial's rules, leaped in front of the baby, snapping at the monster with all his strength. The two beasts clashed, rolling across the stone in a flurry of teeth and claws. The baby watched, his tiny hands clenching into fists. Something stirred deep within him. A force, ancient and primal, awakened. His golden eyes, so much like the wolves, glowed faintly in the darkness. And then, without thinking, he let out a cry, not of fear but of command. Howl. A howl that echoed through the mountains, through the valley, through the very soul of the forest. And the wolves answered. From below, the pack erupted into a chorus of howls, their voices rising into the night. The monster, hearing the call, hesitated for just a moment. It was enough. Fun lunged, sinking his fangs into the creature's throat. With a final guttural snarl, the beast collapsed, its twisted form crumbling into dust. Silence fell. The baby, his breath heavy, looked up at the peak of the mountain, and then he climbed, step by step, until at last he reached the shrine. The blood moon bathed him in crimson light. The wolves below bowed their heads, for the child had proven himself. He was no longer just a human. He was one of them. The baby, of course, did not answer. He only looked up at the wolf with wide eyes, his tiny hand still reaching forward. The massive wolf tilted its head before turning to the mother. You have risked much, Rava. Bringing him here is dangerous. The mother wolf, Rava, let out a soft growl. He freed me from the chains of men. There is something about him, Galder. Something ancient. Galder, the great wolf, narrowed his eyes. He studied the child for a long moment before nodding. Then we shall test him. The trials of the wild. 4 days the child was watched. The wolves observed him as he learned to move among them, to crawl through the grass, to mimic their sounds. Though he was still small, he was quick. His instincts sharper than any human child should have been. The young wolf who had first found him, now named Fun, became his closest companion. They played together, explored the hidden corners of the valley, and even slept curled up beside each other beneath the moonlit sky. But the true test came on the night of the blood moon. The sky turned red as the full moon rose high, casting an eerie glow over the valley. The pack gathered in a wide circle, their eyes reflecting the crimson light. Galder stood at the center, his powerful form silhouetted against the glowing sky. Tonight, he said, his deep voice echoing through the clearing, we will see if the child belongs to the forest, or if he must be returned to the world of men. Rava's ears flattened, a low whimper escaping her throat. He is still too young. And yet, fate has chosen him, Galder replied. The trial must begin. The howls of the wolves echoed through the mountains, carrying a message that all creatures of the forest understood. Something ancient had awoken. The child stood at the peak of the mountain, bathed in the crimson light of the blood moon. His tiny body trembled, not with fear, but with an unexplainable force coursing through his veins. The shrine before him was old, its stone walls covered in moss and symbols long forgotten by humans. Fun, the young wolf who had defied the trial's rules to protect the child, limped toward him, blood dripping from his wounds. His golden eyes met the child's, and in that moment, an unbreakable bond was sealed between them. From below, the wolves watched in stunned silence. Never before had a human climbed the sacred mountain and stood beneath the blood moon without fear. And never before had a human let out a howl that resonated with the spirit of the wild. Galder, the massive black wolf, stepped forward. His golden eyes locked onto the child. It is decided, he growled. He is not merely a lost human. He is something more. Something. He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Something of the old blood. Rava, the mother wolf who had brought the child here, lowered her head in relief. She had known from the moment she saw the baby's eyes that he was different. Now the entire pack knew it too. But what they did not know was the danger that lurked beyond the trees. The shadow that watched. Far from the valley, hidden in the darkest part of the forest, another figure had been watching. A man clad in a tattered cloak, his face hidden beneath a hood, crouched beside a dying fire. His breath was slow, controlled, as he listened to the distant howls of the wolves. His hands, weathered and scarred, traced strange symbols into the dirt. He had been searching for the child for a long time, long before the hunters had chained the mother wolf, long before the baby had wandered into the forest. And now he had finally found him. The man stood, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. He turned to the shadows behind him, where figures stirred, men cloaked in black, their faces obscured by masks made of bone. They carried weapons unlike any seen in the village, blades etched with symbols that pulsed with a sinister energy. "The wolves have claimed him," one of the masked men said, his voice rough and guttural. The man in the tattered cloak smirked. "For now." He turned his gaze toward the distant mountain. "But the child does not belong to them. He belongs to something far greater." A gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying the scent of blood and decay. The hunt was about to begin. The child of the wolves. The next morning, the baby awoke to the feeling of warmth surrounding him. He was nestled in the center of the wolf pack, their bodies forming a protective circle around him. Fun lay beside him, his head resting on the child's tiny shoulder. For the first time, the child did not feel alone. Rava nuzzled him gently, her nose brushing against his cheek. She let out a low, soothing growl, a mother's reassurance that he was safe. But Galder stood at the edge of the clearing, staring toward the horizon. His ears twitched, his nose sniffing the air. Something was wrong. The wind carried a scent he had not smelled in years. "They are coming," he murmured. The other wolves lifted their heads, their ears perking in alertness. "Who?" Rava asked, her voice tense. Galder did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the child. "The ones who seek him." The hidden past. That night, as the pack prepared for the unknown threat approaching, Galder gathered the elders of the wolves. They sat in a sacred circle beneath the oldest tree in the valley, a tree whose roots were said to touch the bones of the first wolves who ever walked the earth. The child sat in the center of the gathering, his small hands grasping at the soft dirt beneath him. He did not understand the words being spoken, but he felt the weight of them in his heart. "The humans do not know the truth," one of the elder wolves murmured. "They believe the child was abandoned. But we know better." Rava looked down at the baby, her golden eyes filled with sorrow. "Then it is true. He was meant to be taken." Galder nodded slowly. Long ago, before the humans forgot their past, there was a time when wolves and men were not separate. There were those who walked between the two worlds, beings of great power, capable of understanding both the wild and the ways of men. He looked at the child. "This boy, he carries the blood of the old ones." A hush fell over the circle. Fawn, still young and inexperienced, let out a confused whimper. "But he is just a baby," he said. "Yes," Galder said. "But he will not stay a baby forever." The hunters in the dark. As the wolves spoke of the child's fate, the men in the cloaks moved through the forest. Their leader, the man in the tattered cloak, knelt beside a fallen deer. His fingers traced the deep gashes along its body, not the work of wolves, but of something far older. "The bloodline survived," he murmured. "After all this time." One of the masked men stepped forward. "Shall we strike tonight?" The leader shook his head. "No, we wait. The blood moon has given the child its blessing, but he is still too young. He does not yet understand what he is." His lips curled into a smile. "Let the wolves teach him. Let them make him strong. And when the time is right." He turned, his cloak billowing in the wind. "We will take him." The child's destiny. In the days that followed, the wolves taught the child their ways. He learned to move through the forest as silently as the wind, to listen to the whispers of the trees, to understand the language of the wild. He did not speak as humans did, but he did not need to. His bond with Fun grew stronger, their connection deepening beyond words. But as the days passed, Rava grew restless. The scent of the hunters had not faded. It lingered in the air, a silent warning that danger was drawing closer. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she found Galder standing at the edge of the valley. "We cannot keep him hidden forever," she said softly. Galder did not turn to her. "Well, we cannot." He glanced at the child, who sat on a rock, watching the stars with Fun curled at his side. "The humans will come for him," Galder said. "And when they do, he must be ready." Rava's heart ached. "And if he is not?" For the first time, Galder's expression wavered. "Then the forest will burn." The night stretched on, the wolves' howls blending with the wind. And in the shadows beyond the trees, unseen eyes watched, waiting. The battle for the child had only just begun. The child grew among the wolves, his small frame learning to move as they did, to listen as they did, to survive as they did. Each passing moon brought new lessons: how to run without leaving a trail, how to sense the shifting moods of the wind, how to blend into the darkness as if he were part of it. Yet, even as he grew stronger, the wolves sensed something else growing within him. Something ancient, something powerful. And far beyond the valley, deep within the blackened ruins of a forgotten temple, others sensed it too. The gathering storm. The man in the tattered cloak stood before the crumbling altar, his hands pressed against the cold stone. The markings on the surface, etched in a language older than time, glowed faintly beneath his touch. Behind him, the masked hunters knelt in silent obedience. A voice, neither male nor female, neither old nor young, whispered from the shadows. "The bloodline has been dormant for too long. It must be reclaimed." The leader of the hunters bowed his head. "The wolves guard him well. They believe he is one of them." A low, eerie chuckle rippled through the air. "He is more than that. He is the bridge between two worlds. And he must be taken before he understands his true nature." The man's fingers tightened against the stone. "And if the wolves resist?" The shadows deepened, curling like living tendrils around the temple's walls. "Then the forest will drown in blood." The boy who was neither wolf nor man. Back in the valley, the child, now nearly 5 years old, watched the horizon from the highest rock he could climb. His golden eyes gleamed in the fading light, scanning the forest as if sensing something unseen. Fawn, his ever-loyal companion, sat beside him, his ears twitching at every rustle in the leaves. "You feel it too, don't you?" the young wolf murmured. The boy did not speak, not in the way humans did, but he nodded. His instincts had sharpened beyond what even the wolves expected. He could hear the distant heartbeat of the earth, feel the shifting of unseen forces. Rava approached from behind, her massive form casting a long shadow over them. "Come down from there, little one," she said, her voice filled with quiet worry. "Tonight we move." The boy looked at her. He could sense the fear beneath her calm words. "Why?" It was one of the few words he had ever spoken. His voice was rough, unused to human speech, yet it carried the weight of something beyond his years. Rava hesitated. "The hunters are coming." The boy turned his gaze back to the trees. "I know." The march of the hunters. Through the dense woods, the masked men moved like ghosts, their footsteps silent, their weapons glinting in the moonlight. They carried nets woven with ancient spells, ropes laced with a strange energy that pulsed like veins of fire. At their lead, the man in the tattered cloak strode forward, his eyes fixed on the distant mountains. He could feel the child's presence. Closer, closer. A single thought echoed in his mind. He is the key. Behind him, the hunters moved in formation, spreading out like a shadowed tide, preparing to surround the valley. The wolves' last stand. The pack had known this day would come. They had seen it in the shifting winds, in the restless nights, in the way the stars seemed to burn brighter as if warning them of what lay ahead. Galder stood at the edge of the valley, his massive frame poised like a statue carved from the very mountain itself. His golden eyes burned with an intensity that sent a shiver through even the bravest of his kin. "They come to take him," he said, his voice deep as rolling thunder. "And they will not stop until they have him." Fun's fur bristled. "Then we fight."